This podcast is a TOFOP production.
Head to tofop.com for more.
The following episode of TOFOP is rated MA for mature audiences. It may contain sexual references, time travel references, allegations of bin misconduct, and mild coarse language. TOFOP advises that this episode is not suitable for anyone under the age of 15 or anyone who thinks a comedy conversation between two old mates sounds like a terrible idea for a show. Minors must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. This is John Deek speaking.
Everyone relax. This is TOFOP. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Wil Anderson. Hello, and thank you for watching.
Well, I'm not sure if you have noticed now that we are doing this podcast with a HD video, I have a tan line. Have you seen this? This is one of the kind of drawbacks of having long hair. Over the summer, I was wearing my hair down, and so now I have this patch of white skin here. This is good motivation for anyone listening to sign up to our Patreon so you can see the full video of me pointing out where my sexy forehead tan line is. Can you see that, the color difference?
Here's what people at home need to know. So this technology we're recording on, you get the perfect HD video, but sometimes because of the nature of us being over the internet, we see each other a little fuzzy. So until you pointed it out, I just assumed it was some weird quirk of the technology, that I was just getting some sort of glare off your forehead or something from like the lights. And I was like, that is a weird like effect. It kind of feels like, to be honest, that you've got like a kind of horseshoe shape on your forehead, like that's just sitting there. But I just assumed it was the bad lighting. I didn't realize that this was actually, that came with your skin. Any lighting circumstances that it would be there.
I only noticed this on Friday. I went for a run and I had some time off. I was in daycare, so I was like, I'm going to go to a cafe. I'm going to bloody spoil myself and actually like eat lunch in a cafe.
Walk me through this. So, did you run to the cafe?
No. So I did the lighthouse run in Byron, and so I went up and down there, cooled down in the park, stretched. Allowed myself to kind of my heart rate to get to a more resting level, and then went for a bit of a wander through town, and thought I will indulge myself with a lunch in a cafe, like a bloody independent adult who doesn't have a kid. And I noticed that people were looking at me strange, but I just thought, well, it's fine. I'm in Byron. Maybe it's because I'm not alternative enough, or maybe because I'm not Botoxed enough, depending on what side of Byron you fall on. Are you part of the original alternative crew, or are you part of the Byron Bay kind of movement? I fall on neither side. But when I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and I realized that even though I'd cooled down, stretched and stuff after my run, that I was quite red-faced, but the red had not distributed itself evenly. And that's when I noticed this tan line as well. So I had large blotches of red, but kind of ran like a Rorschach test of inflammation around my face, with a large pale white dot here where my tan line is. But the thing is, everyone was polite because, they were staring, but no one was saying anything because it looked like a pre-existing skin condition. Like, what's that one that Michael Jackson had, the vertigo or something like that? It looked like I had.
Yeah, vertigo, of course. That thing that everybody knows about, vertigo.
Vertigo, go. I don't know what I'm meant to do about this tan line, if I meant to even it out or anything like that, but I haven't had long hair for a while.
No, I own it. I think that should be your signature look. You've been talking about that idea of what's my look? How do I fit in this community? I think top deck head. People can just like go, who's that guy over there whose head looks like a Cadbury top deck
head.
Actually, I love the blotches more. So top deck head. Who's that deckhead? Did you call me a dickhead? No, mate, deckhead, like top deckhead.
Yeah, they can shorten it to deckhead. I like being top deckhead. I'm not against the idea of having a signature kind of look. Like there's certain in high, how like in high fashion, like generally the fashion industry is pretty terrible for body image for, men and women and forcing them into very narrow kind of fields. But then occasionally there'll be one like tokenistic, runway model who's got some strange kind of like pre-existing condition or abnormality. It might be minor, like a big gap between the teeth, or it might be like a skin condition or something like that. Maybe, I mean, is it too much of a stretch to think that maybe my fashion career starts now? That everyone's like, we've got this new label we want to launch. We want someone different. We want some cut through. We want to say we're independent. Find me a top deck head. Is there a top deck head out there that we can get? And then one guy was like, well, I was at a cafe the other day and this blotchy top deck head came in.
You are the least qualified person, right? Like at the moment, because you're like a white straight man, like a middle-aged white straight man. Diamond doesn't. Plenty of them around. They've had it too good for too long.
Saturated market.
You just going in. Right. As that's not a good hook for you at the moment. But top deck head, I feel like that's a look. That feels like a fashion-forward look. Like, if you could actually get that to catch on, like if on TikTok or whatever, it became a trend of like, oh my God, did you see that guy with the top deck head? Maybe you need a sponsorship from Cadbury's Top Deck, right? You need to get Top Deck on board. You maybe get some viral money behind it, and you try to make people, maybe you've got to incorporate it with a community. So what's a community? Because that's what you need, right? You need cool culture, like normally
I'm representing
leads these sort of things. So I'm thinking decks.
What subculture?
I'm thinking skateboarding, right? So like, you call
deck heads,
right?
Yeah.
So deck heads, you could be like, because you call a skateboard a deck, right? Do you?
Yeah,
I'm an old man. I'm speculating. Do they still call it a deck?
I think they do, but isn't there also like, aren't there? I'm thinking when we go even more niche. I'm pretty sure there's like music enthusiasts who are deck heads, like guys who collect tape decks.
Oh.
So could I be like, because that's what fashion's all about. Yep. They want subculture. Like I think skating's a bit mainstream now anyway. Too big.
Yeah.
But if I was representing like, they could market me like a boy band. They could say, "Oh, this dude is like, I'm backed by like big fashion," but they're saying, "Oh, this guy comes from niche culture. He only listens to music on tape. He's so hipster,
and his head also looks like a top deck."
Do you think that would work, or is it like one of those kind of ethical dilemmas, like? So I've had this thing occur by accident and it suddenly grants me access to this new world. But this is just a tan line, Will. My skin will eventually even itself out. And then I have to I've been pretending this is some kind of like from birth. I had this condition.
Oh, no. So you can't do that. You can't. No. Okay. That's disrespectful. No, you can't be like culturally appropriating people's skin diseases. Like it's disrespectful to people who suffer from skin diseases. No, this is a purely voluntary thing that you're doing here. This is a fashion thing. It's like wearing like at the moment
like
there's bikinis that have like under boob or whatever, or wearing a Band-Aid on your head, or like wearing your headband when you go for a run. This is like a fashion thing, right? But I think that we've missed the most obvious one, which is we're thinking fashion, we're thinking breaking into the world of fashion. That's pretty hard. But what we could break into is that world of sort of angry white men on the internet conspiracy land. Because you know how in America, like fuck you Biden is now let's go Brandon, and they've all got like t-shirts that say let's go Brandon, and it's their secret code to say fuck you Biden. Like the MAGA hats will get you kicked out of a party, right? Like if people say, but if you want to send a signal to someone else at the party that you normally love wearing your MAGA hat and you're one of them, you've got to be a deckhead. That's how you see other people at the party. They're sort of like, red to the sort of halfway through their face and then white for the rest.
That makes sense too, because it's kind of like you're incorporating like a bit of that redneck imagery, but it's red face, white forehead. And there is a bit of something about having the white on top, like it's sort of like symbolically.
Well, I would say let's do it like that. You've got to have your neck sunburn on the neck, so it's extra red. So this is what we've got to lean into. So you get out in the sun, like you've got to encourage, and this is great for us as well, because it feels like we're on the side of these guys. But the other thing is we're encouraging a lot of them to get really bad skin cancer. So we're doing our bit for world peace as well. So we encourage people that if you really love, the alt-right, what you need to start doing is getting this deckhead look where you completely sunburn your face right up to your forehead, and then it's like pure white up there. That's the kind of secret signal that like pure white, redneck, pure white.
It's funny. I was watching this documentary on Stan last night about neo-Nazi groups in Australia, like the rise of neo-Nazism. Mm-hmm. And I think you probably remember there was like a investigative piece done by 60 Minutes and the Sydney Morning Herald and Channel 9, I think, where they infiltrated this group in Victoria, the largest neo-Nazi group in Australia. And I was really surprised because the guy that they hired to go undercover, who I'm assuming is private investigator or an ex-cop or maybe he's just like an investigative journalist, but this dude's obviously experienced in undercover. So, because they document the whole thing, like, you know, they've identified the group. They want to get more information about the inner workings of the group. What's the leadership structure? How are they recruiting? All this kind of stuff. And so they're talking to this undercover guy, and they're like, "Well, you need to ingratiate yourself with the group. You need to then move into the inner circle, and then just feed all the information back to us." And this is all like documented. And so the guy who's going undercover, like, he's all mic'd up and stuff, obviously wearing a wire for the documentary purposes. So he does his interview with the white supremacists. And I'm like, oh, this will be interesting to sort of see, like, you know, this is the first real contact he's having with them. So he's been messaging them over Telegram and stuff and going to their Facebook pages and stuff. And eventually, you know, he's set up this kind of interview to be let into the group. And the guy sort of said to him, the first question the white supremacists asked him, like, you know, well, how would you describe your political views? And from an acting point of view, like when you take on a character, you generally, you know, you sort of dig a bit deep into, oh, well, where's this person come from? And you want to have some complexity to it. You know, it's a fairly detailed backstory. So it's like, well, you know, my father did this and my mother did this. I went to school here, just so the world feels more enriched for you. Turns out when you're going undercover, you just go for the most obvious thing, because the guy was like, what's your political views? And he's gone, oh, I'd say I'm racist. Like, I'm just really racist.
I'm really racist. I love white people and not other people. I'm totes racist. What's your backstory? No backstory, just racist. Just love being racist.
That's exactly what he's saying. Then the whole time I'm watching this going like, surely the neo-Nazis are going to go, this sounds awfully like convenient and not very well thought out at all. But no, like they're like, sure, we agree with that too. We are also incredibly racist and we believe in racism. And it was like...
Hey, any of you guys like racism? Because I'm really into racism. You guys like racism? Tell us about the racism you've done.
You tick off the cliches. He was like, also, you know, why do you have those political views? Oh, because they come here and they steal our jobs and they do all the crimes. And like, it's literally the first three things you could think of. And then they were like, and what are your views on homosexuality? And he's like, oh, well, it's not Adam and Eve, it's Adam and Steve. Yeah. Oh. And then I'm suddenly like going, come on, white supremacists, like, you should be able to sniff this out. This guy's like not even trying.
This guy's literally just saying things that are on bumper stickers.
Literally. And then so he gets into the group, and so he's, you know, they've identified where the headquarters is, and so he's gone around and like it's, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever tried to infiltrate any group I've been in, so maybe I don't know. But he's walking around like with this hidden camera, like button, you know, pinhole camera, going up to every single person and saying, "G'day, I'm Davo. What's your name? And what do you do in this group?" And like, you know, like literally being so unsubtle. And these people being like, I'm the sergeant at arms or whatever. And oh yeah, I organize all this stuff. And so at one stage, like, you know, he's saying goodbye to a couple of them, one of the neo-Nazis and his girlfriend, and his dog's in the car. And the neo-Nazi and his girlfriend come over and they're patting the dog and stuff. And they're like, oh, you know, it's great. It's a German Shepherd. It's like, yeah, of course it's a German Shepherd. You know, I wouldn't have any other dog. And then they said, what's the dog's name? It's gone, Kaiser. And I'm like, oh, come on, neo-Nazis. Like, this dude is being so obvious. There aren't any alarm bells ringing. It was just like, I thought maybe I could go undercover. Like, the level of kind of backstory I've done on Home and Away goes much further than this investigative reporter.
I mean, it does feel like it's the absolute cliche
bare minimum
of what it is to be a neo-Nazi. But maybe that's what being a neo-Nazi is. Like, because maybe they are just play acting those things, right? Like, and it is those key talking points. You just check off the top 5 and you're a neo-Nazi. It's funny what you said about him just asking people what their names were and what they did. Have you seen the M. Night Shyamalan movie Old?
No, the beach that makes you old? Or is that a spoiler?
Yeah, The Beach That Makes You Old. I haven't. No. That's the whole principle of the movie. The Beach That Makes You Old, people know about. I've tried to watch it twice, and I still haven't made it to what I imagine is a twist ending at some stage, right? But it's so frustrating. It's such a terrible film on so many different levels. But the thing that kills me the most about this film, and I've watched it now twice because it was being watched in the house yesterday, and I was walking by it and I went, oh, it's fucking happened again. And it reminded me of this. There is a kid character who basically the idea is, I think, that he wants to be like a filmmaker or like a journalist or whatever, but he's literally just the laziest exposition character you have ever met in your entire life, because he literally just goes around to people and goes, hi, what's your name? What do you do? And that is how all the characters are introduced in this film. They're like, you know what? We could like write a script that introduced these various characters in an interesting and creative way, or we could just get a kid to literally go up to each of them and say, what's your name? What do you do? But it turns out that is how you become an undercover investigative reporter. So maybe I'm wrong and M. Night Shyamalan is right.
Have you seen The Batman?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't had the opportunity to go to the movies.
This is not a spoiler in any way, but Commissioner Gordon is essentially that same character. Like, I think, because the genre they're doing is noir, so there's a lot of like puzzle solving and mystery solving and all that kind of stuff. But Commissioner Gordon's primary job in the entire film is to just be like, what the hell is that? What the hell does that mean, Batman? What the hell is going on? It's like, and then Batman explains whatever the clue is or the puzzle is. But I could have sworn I was counting by the end. It's like, what the hell is that? What the hell? What the hell is going on?
This,
it's like, how did you get to Commissioner when you don't seem to know anything that's going on? Like, you know you're following a serial killer. You know he leaves these cryptic clues, but you seem so stunned every time you find a new one. Oh, my God, what the hell is that?
But maybe that's what you need in that job. You need somebody with like a childlike curiosity, somebody who's always willing to ask the questions of the experts to explain it. You don't always need, I mean, if you have two Batmen in the room, like two alphas, like Batman's clearly an alpha. He's not going to get along with Commissioner Gordon if he's like another alpha coming in and they're like button heads all the time. You need someone who's actually just like, you need someone who's going to be the wind beneath the bat wings, to speak.
That is true. And I also, like, just in terms of conversation, will sometimes ask questions that I know the answer to because I want to hear what someone's take on something is. So maybe that's Commissioner Gordon's deal. Is like, I even know who did the murder, but I like this Batman guy. I just like hanging out with him. He's a cool guy. He dresses cool. He's got that cool voice. He's got a great car. It's like hanging out with him. He makes me cool by association.
But the other thing is, I think it's like when, say, for example, like you maybe have like a rich friend or something like that, and you want to go to this thing with this rich friend, but you don't want to be the person who's like, hey, can we go to this thing? Because I can't afford it. And like, I know you'll end up paying for it, but I don't want to bring it up. But if they brought it up, if they suggested it. So I think Commissioner Gordon has limited resources and limited ways that he can go about like fixing the crimes. Like, he's confined by some rules that the Batman isn't, I imagine, right? So I think he's got to go into all these situations going, hey, this thing, like, I've got a solution. But what's your solution? Because I reckon your solution will have more like flying planes and bashing and cool stuff.
On that idea of like cops bringing in, an outsider. I was talking to someone the other day about psychics, and they were there's someone in the area where we live in the Northern Rivers who's like a famous psychic. And
so you're a famous psychic in the Northern Rivers. Who would have thought?
But someone was saying to me, oh yeah, no, she's the person that the police called in for blah, blah, blah case. And I'm like, hang on. Does that actually happen in real life where the police will get a, because I've seen it in TV shows and movies, but I've always assumed that's fiction. And how would you feel if you were the family of the victim, where the police like, look, we'll be honest with you, we've run into a brick wall, but we've got Celeste here and she's got a feeling. She's got a feeling she knows where the car is. Like, that seems to be a pretty desperate move. I'm suggesting, like, if the cops start going to kind of parlor games to sort of solve the crime.
It happens a lot. Often I believe it happens less that the cops go and contact the psychics, but the psychics contact the cops. And then the cops have to decide one way or the other whether they use them or not. And I imagine that's like a case-by-case basis, and it would be in consultation with the victims, like, and how comfortable they are with it. But I don't think it's the cops going through the book going like, hey, look up some psychics. We're out of ideas. A lot of the time I think it's psychics going to the cops and saying, I reckon I know where the body is, or I've got a suspicion about this. If the psychic came, I'd want to see their track record. I wouldn't want this to be their first rodeo.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time I've got a hunch about what's going on. Like, give me like the last 10 things that you predicted accurately. Give me a little bit of a, form sheet, and then I'll see if we can get you involved in this case.
Especially up here. It's like, hey, less with the like one-on-one crime and more with the natural disasters. Could any of you predicted the floods that were about to happen?
Yeah, go back 6 weeks and tell me what this psychic was saying about the weather, and then I'll tell you whether I'm going to get them involved in this missing persons case or not.
I've been,
Can I say, like, when it comes to like that part of the world, the fact that it's raining again where we are,
right
which
now.
is incredibly triggering. For people who've just been through a massive natural disaster, it is raining a lot again. Some locals have rebuilt a bridge, which is the only way out of my house at the moment. And it's fair to say that like 3-4 weeks ago when they rebuilt that bridge, that was like a good looking bridge. But the last few times I've driven over that bridge, I'm like, either the locals are going to have to get back out there again, or that bridge is going to go again. And it's starting to be scary. Again up here, hopefully it won't be as bad as last time, but the fact that it's raining so much again, just off the back of it raining so much, is terrifying.
Well, they sent out there's flood warnings went out yesterday, all over the northern rivers. I did some volunteering again on Friday, up in near Maynarm, and this girl, incredible again, the community spirit. Incredible. This girl is a university student whose dad runs a freight company out of South Australia. And so she called him and said, hey, if I could organize some donations, you reckon you could organize some free freight to get, the donations up here? And he's like, yeah, sure. She thought she was going to get like 5 pallets worth of donations, ended up getting like 35. And her dad's like, you need to organize like a storage facility because this is like, 2 semi-trailers worth coming your way. So this girl, who is not a professional like crisis relief organizer, she's a uni student in her early 20s, managed to find like a storage facility in Billinudgel, called the owner in Thailand, got him to donate like a couple of shipping containers so she could put storage in, and then has been coordinating getting these donations delivered and then out to areas that need them. And so I was just helping her unload stuff and a bunch of other volunteers, which is great. But at the same time, I'm like, should this not be being done by like a professional like crisis management team? Like, why a month after the fact are we still relying on a university student who is making it up as she goes along, doing a great job? I'm not trying to cast any dispersions on her, but it's like, it seems to me insane that this is still like on the people to solve this problem. Where is the help, Will?
We're looking at creating jobs for a new world. Why not be putting a huge amount of money at the moment into crisis management, training people properly to manage the crisis? We know that we're going to have more crisis, right? Yeah. So in the meantime, while we're trying to fucking fix the reasons that these things are happening, why not train people who, like you said, are ready to be on the ground, go into these communities, at least help coordinate. Even if this university student was still doing something, have someone that they can consult with, that, can give them the right tips and, management procedures and all these sort of things to actually help out. So last night I did a flood relief show at the Brunswick Picture House, and one day I might release the audio of this encounter. It's hard because I was talking to someone in the audience and they're not mic'd, but it was honestly the funniest bit of improvised comedy that I think I've ever done in one of these shows. Not because of anything in particular that I was doing, but I will tell you a very short version of the story. But I was talking to this older looking fella in the front row, and I was talking about how much it was raining, and I made some reference to arcs. And he says, well, funnily enough, I was in a meeting today about building an ark, which is a very Northern Rivers response to something like that. It's rare you would be in many other places. And someone was like, well, funnily enough, I was in a meeting about an ark just today. Who would have thought? So it turns out he is part of a creative committee in Mullumbimby, around flood relief. And they are... there's a committee that's been put together to investigate to build an ark, whether they will build an ark. And I asked him, I said, why do you want to build an ark? And he said, well, our building washed away and we don't want our building to wash away again. And I had to be the first person to point out to him, Charlie, that they had literally built something designed for being washed away. Like an ark is a boat. Like you could not have built something less secure in a flood than a fucking ark. It's not staying there. It's fucking off immediately. And like no one in the committee had brought that up at any stage. Tay, do you reckon this is an issue?
Hang on, but is the idea behind the ark that if it does flood, that at least they'll float, that they won't go under? Was that the idea?
I guess so, but I think they'd only thought that it would float up. They would not
float with the tide. That's amazing. How big is the ark, though? Like that I mean, are they talking biblical two of each animal, or is it just like
no? I asked
two
about
of each
the
person in
animals.
Mullumbimby? No.
Yeah, they're not doing. Yeah, just two people from the drum circle, two anti-vaxxers, two anti-5G people.
What qualifies it as an ark rather than just a boat? Like, isn't he just building a boat?
Good point. No, I think he was very specific about the idea that it was an ark.
Okay.
So I think it's some sort of like, I don't know what the difference between an ark and a boat is necessarily, but
podcast, Mike.
But yeah, he definitely was like.
Could you find what is the definition of an ark and how does it differentiate from a boat? Because if it's just a size thing, I mean, you've got like cruise liners, which essentially are boats, right? And they take thousands of people. So are they arks, or why is it an ark? Is it the shape of it or something?
I don't know. These are questions I should have asked. And I asked him a lot of questions. I talked to him for about 20 minutes and I did not actually get to the specifics of it. Another person I talked to, and I thought this might be interesting to bring up, is there was someone in the front row who was a marketing manager for macadamia nuts.
Yeah.
And we started talking about nuts and what were the most popular nuts in Australia and what nuts people preferred. So could you rank in order? Are you a nut eater? Do you like nuts?
I got lots of nuts, yeah. I got a pantry full of nuts right now.
Okay, so rank in order. Give us your top 5. Give me your top 5 nuts and give me what you think Australia's top 5 nuts are in preference.
Well, I reckon my top 5 would be also Australia's top 5. I think I'm your I am your generic nut purchaser. I would say.
Okay, so you think you're generic nut purchaser. I learned from this woman last night that people who buy specific nuts generally consume other nuts as well. It's rare that you only eat one sort of nut. You will eat a range of nuts. Therefore, I'm interested in your rankings. Can you go from 5 up to 1?
Okay, so let me just say if that doesn't. Yeah, okay. I reckon I would put Brazil nuts. No, macadamia nuts at number 5 because they're kind of fancy.
Macadamia's at 5, you say?
Yeah. They're kind of expensive. They're like, they're your top end nut. Then I would say walnuts at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, actually, no, I'm going to put walnuts at, I'm going to keep walnuts at 4. Then I'm going to say peanuts at 3.
Mm-hmm.
No, fuck this up. I'm going to start from 1. I'm going to say almonds at number 1.
Okay, start from 1.
Almonds
are number 1 in your...
almonds are number 1. Peanuts are number 2. I'm going to say walnuts are number 3. I'm going to say macadamias at number 4. I'll bump them up 1. And then I would say 5th is a interesting one. Like pecans? Because that might be a bit too niche. Pecans or hazelnuts. No, I'm going to say hazelnuts. Number 5.
Okay, according to this woman who did work for Big Macadamia, so we need to take that into account, but apparently backed up by research around this topic. Australia's top 5 nuts. I think this is the order that she said. In first place, macadamias.
No,
macadamias are the finest of all nuts, apparently. The most preferred. As she said last night, always taken first. If you're in a packet of mixed nuts, people always go for the macadamias first.
I agree, but are we talking in terms of like ranking of quality? I would say sure, but in terms of consumption, peanuts or almonds would
we're not talking consumption. By the way, peanuts not nuts, legumes. Found that.
Is
out
that right?
Night. Yeah, peanuts not actually nuts.
I did. Did you learn that last night?
I literally did during a bit of crowd work last night. And in fact, not even from the person I was talking to. It was a heckle from someone else in the audience.
I love it. Someone's just really getting their nose out of joint about all this.
Someone was like, peanuts aren't even nuts, mate. Bloody coming around here pretending to be nuts, using our bathrooms. Oh, this is taking a weird turn. No, this is meant to be in preference. So, like, let's just say cost out the window. Like, you've got a packet of mixed nuts there. Okay. What is the order that you're eating those mixed nuts? Give me that.
Okay, all right. Okay, I understand that. So yeah, I reckon then macadamia probably does come at number one because they are the fanciest. Okay. They're the fanciest.
What's in number two then? In your mixed nuts.
In a mixed nuts. And so are we saying peanuts are out because they're legumes, or can peanuts for the sake of
peanuts did not make the top 5? So
what?
They're just yes.
That is bullshit. We need to investigate. Okay, so I'd say almonds go in at number 2. So macadamia.
No, you're overlooking one of the fanciest of all nuts.
Pistachio.
Pistachios come in at 3, so you're good, but you're missing a very obvious nut.
Am I?
Yeah. It used to be like before macadamias came along. Oh, by the way, macadamia is Australian.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's good. But before macadamias came along, there was another big nut on the block. You remember?
I mean, Brazil.
Yeah. What was Brazil are bulky, and they do make the top 5. By the way, I think in 5th. But you think about an unusually shaped nut.
Okay. So I've said walnut and I've said hazelnut, and they've been poo-pooed. An unusual shaped nut. What is it? Just tell me.
Cashew. Macadamia, cashew.
I'm an idiot. I've got a bloody jar full of cashews in my pantry upstairs. I'm an idiot. You're right. No, that makes sense to me. And they are a good nut too, because cashews transition effortlessly between sweet and savory. And you roast them there, and you get extra flavor. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So okay, macadamia, cashew, then almond.
Yeah.
Then almond is 3.
Pistachio in 3.
Oh God.
I think almond was 4 and Brazil was 5 from memory.
See, I reckon pistachio is overrated. I think people have been fooled by the salted pistachio, because that's like they're really good. The salted, but an ordinary pistachio without salt it's not that great.
Yeah, but most nuts without salt are great. Like, I mean, I like salt on my nuts.
Well, we found our clip for the week. I like roast almonds without salt. I think roast almonds are my favorite easily. Almonds are the ones I use most often in, like, when I'm cooking. If I need to add a bit of flavor to something, a bit of essential fats, I always will go for an almond.
What are you cooking with almonds? Like, what do you put almonds into?
You can put almonds into smoothies. You can, if you do like a stir fry, you can crush up some almonds and sprinkle them across the top. Almond butter is great on toast. Almond butter, with my sweet almond eggs. Almond butter is a great additive to lots of things. It can be, you can make it into a satay sauce, an almond satay sauce. Mix it with a bit of tamari and some sriracha and sesame oil. Why are you laughing? It's a legitimate thing. By the way, I know I've copped a lot of shit for my healthy banana pancakes for years on this show.
Yes.
And I mentioned last week that I made Iona banana pancakes with flour. She told me this week that she does not like flour pancakes, and she only wants me to make the banana pancakes. So what do you want to do with that?
I mean, I don't know, not eat like a 2-year-old child.
I think
not base all my decisions on what I do in my life based on what your toddler daughter does.
Mate, I'm questioning a lot of my choices at the moment. I don't know what's happened this week. I know that you'll understand this. Like, you're a person, and I'm very similar in the way that, when you get like a hankering for something, like you'll eat a chocolate bar or something like that. You just eat, like, you'll eat it until you make yourself sick. This becomes your thing, your favorite thing, and you're just going to eat it until, like, you can't bear to look at it anymore. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do know what you're talking about. I've recently had an obsession with a dairy-free vegan peanut brownie that I got for a friend of ours who's dairy-free and vegan, and I ate some on the way home, And then I've been back to that dairy-free vegan shop like 3 days in a row going, give me more of that brownie.
I'm exactly the same. But it's happened to me in the most unexpected way. How did I get? Oh, yeah. Okay. So I own it at daycare, and Iona has suddenly become aware of the Spice Girls. She really likes the Spice Girls. And so we'll normally listen to Wannabe while I'm driving her to daycare. And then once I've dropped her off, because I've selected that on Spotify, it then rolls on to the next, song in that genre. And so it rolls into like late 90s British pop music, like boy band and girl band music. And so just through like, I guess some kind of osmosis, I was like listening to this, like these British pop bands. And I started getting like curious about, like the late 90s. That's right. That's when like boy bands were at their zenith. And so I just started doing a bit of digging around online, and I found this show on YouTube. It was like a TV show in 2013 called The Big Reunion, where they went out to all these big boy and girl bands from the late 90s, like Atomic Kitten and like 911 and the Honeys and stuff. And these guys were all big in the 90s. It's been 13 years since they were famous, and they were bringing them back together for like one last big hurrah. And so it's like, part reality series, part kind of, Australian Idol, where they get these acts back on stage. And I started watching this show, and I just was getting, I was fascinated by this idea of all these bands in the late 90s. This is, I guess the last time when you could sell 20 million albums. All these acts were huge. Like, they all sold like millions and millions of records, and they were all intensely famous for no longer than a, say, 3 to 4 year period. And their stories all in the same way. They hit the scene with this huge amount of like, popularity, and they've got number ones, and they're touring the world, and they have number one albums, and then they all implode. It's the same story with each band. It's like they get to the third album, someone gets burnt out, they quit, they try and carry on. Maybe they replace them, or they, become a 3-piece or a 2-piece, whatever it is. And then they always implode. And then the stories from that is like, there'll be 1 or 2 band members who try and kind of keep the fame thing going. But then there'll be other band members who are like, well, that was fun, I'm just going to get a real job. And so in this like series, it's them kind of reforming the band, and you're sort of getting all the stories of, so there's this one boy band called Five. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they were like, yeah, they were like the
Don't
British.
you mean Five Ive?
Yeah, Five Ive.
Wasn't it the Five Ive?
That's right. So they were like Simon Cowell, pre-Australian Idol.
Baby, when the lights
go out. Yeah, exactly. So they were Simon Cowell's like pre-Australian Idol project. Yeah. They wanted to create a English Backstreet Boys that were a bit.
Wasn't one of them called Abs? Was there one of them was called Abs, right?
Richie, Abs, Scott, Jay, and Sean. They were the 5 guys. And so Abs was the kind of unofficial kind of lead singer. He was the Justin Timberlake. He was probably the most talented. Right. Could sing and rap, was good looking. Then you had Richie, who was like the Hugh Grant. He had the kind of like fringe and was always wearing like very preppy dressed, polo shirt and stuff. You had Jay, who was the kind of heavy. He was the rapper who would come in, and he was probably the best looking. He was probably second to Abs as the leader. So you had Scott, who's kind of he was the singer, but probably like the least sort of good looking of them. And then you had Sean, who was like the shy, mysterious one that probably all the girls liked. He was like the George Harrison of the group. So I started focusing on Five because they had this meteoric rise where they were like poised to become a huge boy band. They'd cracked the UK market, 3 number ones. And they're all, they'd had their first like top 10 single in the US. They're all set to go. One of the guys quit the band. Then another, like a month later, another guy quit. And then it all just sort of fell apart, and they just sort of disintegrated. So when this series, The Big Reunion, starts up, like 4 of the guys are wanting to get together. And Jay, the heavy, the rapper, they're trying to get him back in. But he decides at the last minute, you know what? Since the band broke up, I just turn my back on showbiz. I just like being anonymous. I don't really want to go back into that. And so they go ahead and they do the show, and it's a big success, whatever.
Now, do they rename themselves for?
They had that discussion. They auditioned for a new 5th member, and that's great. Like the audition process is great. Like this one dude comes in, and he's just like, he's this like, I'm a male model, but I've done some singing stuff. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, can you sing for us? He's like, no, nah. And like, oh, okay, well, could you rap? And he's like, no. And they're like, so you gonna do anything? He's like, no, I'll just, if I get the job, I'll do it. And he walks out of the room and I'm like, fucking hell, the balls on that guy. It's like he's coming in specifically to audition to be a singer. And it's like, will you sing? He's like, nah, I'll do it if I get the job.
Yeah, if I get the job. Are you paying me for this audition? No.
So they have this discussion about like, do they just become a 4-piece? And so that's what they end up doing. But during the course of this series, like they all sort of talk about their recollections of the band, and they all start like dropping shit on Jay, the guy who has refused to come back, to saying he was a bully and, he was a bit older than the rest of us and, we're all intimidated by him and blah, blah, blah. So then I was like, shit, like I've got to find out what happened to Jay. Like, I'm like, where is it? And there is like, he literally, when he left showbiz, he left. There is nothing. He has no social media presence. You can't find anything about him online apart from, I think he did I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2007. And the only other thing he did was he did this right of reply interview after the series of this reunion, where he just did this interview and he said like, he said, I don't really watch TV or anything like that, but, I heard the boys were doing a show and I was really excited for them. And so I dug the TV out of and I sat down to watch my mates. And then they all just bag the shit out of me and say that, like, I'm the reason the band broke up and that I was a bully and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, it's gone, like, I was in the band too. Like, we were all under, like, the same amount of intense pressure. And, the whole reason I've never decided to go back into showbiz is gone. I just fucking hated it. Like, I hated being told what to think, what to wear, where to be, making songs we didn't really even care about. And so, and all of these bands, like whether it was Five or Atomic Kitten, it feels like all of them, at least one band member was so like depressed by the experience that they were like driven to suicide, or at least suicidal thoughts. And then I started thinking about it, it's like, okay, so boy bands, they don't really exist anymore. I guess since the advent of like Australian Idol and stuff, and maybe even K-pop has sort of supplanted boy and girl bands. That's like the number one sort of like
K-pop are boy and girl bands mostly, right?
But it's kind of, that's taken, like, I think, the appeal of boy band and girl bands, was that it's like, it's almost like superheroes. It's like you have your favorite character and it's all about the dance moves and the costumes and the choreography. And I think K-pop is that, souped up by a million. Like there's 9 band members and the costumes are amazing. The dancing is even more incredible and stuff. But then I was reading about all these, so especially in England, where, as we've discussed on previous episodes, they love a novelty song. Like you can release a cover song of Eternal Flame or whatever, and it'll go straight to number 1 if you get the timing right. But it seems like these record companies, their modus operandi is like, okay, so we'll run these talent recruitments. We'll find this band. We'll assemble this band. We'll sign them to a 6-album deal, knowing that they're probably going to implode after 3 albums. We're probably only going to get, they're almost banking on the fact that this band won't be able to fulfill their commitments, because the contracts they get signed to at the start are massively in the record company's favor. If you can survive that initial 6-album deal, then you can renegotiate and you can probably give yourself a much better deal. But like all of these artists, and like I'm talking like multiple, like 12 different groups, and none of them have any money. Like, and all these record companies sold, like I think 5 sold 20 million albums worldwide. And, none of them have anything to show for it. And then you're like, oh, so that's kind of what it was in the 90s. It's like, if you, wanted to make a lot of money really quickly, get that boy or girl band together, sign them up to some ridiculous, completely inequitable deal, and hope, like you're kind of banking on the fact that they are going to implode. Because when they were discussing like why they broke up, it was like, they'd been working for 3 years straight. They hadn't had any days off. It was just like tour, studio, press. And they're all like 15, 16, 17 when it started. So they're teenagers. So it makes complete sense by the time they get to 20, they're like going fucking crazy. But then it's like, that's what they want. Like, that's what these record companies want. It's so bizarre. And then, so I was like, okay, well, we're a 3 now. 3. We're a 5 now. 5 at 3. So they just, Abs has left, and Jay, like I said, underground, he's never really surfaced again. Abs is a really like interesting dude. He's from West London, so he's got that kind of like Ali G, Stormzy kind of accent, like for real, like talks like that. And he's like covered in tattoos now, and he lives on a farm. He's a farmer now, essentially. But I found this interview he did like 3 years ago, where again he was talking about how being a pop star like drove him towards suicide, and he tells this story about how so after Five sort of split up, he got a solo album deal, didn't really go anywhere, but he was still like a celebrity and bobbing around in the UK doing stuff. And money was going, but he had this penthouse apartment with no furniture and like no cutlery. It's the only thing he had was his apartment, but nothing in it. And so eventually this very wealthy woman, like wealthy society woman, said to him, just come stay with me. I've got a big house. You can stay in one of my rooms. So he moved into this mansion, and he said like this woman was like just super wealthy and plugged in with like royalty and like just like the rich of the rich in the UK. And he said every day was a party. Like there was just constantly people at the house, constant parties. He'd wake up in the morning, there'd be like a tray of cocaine and like a vodka pineapple smoothie beside his bed. That was his breakfast for like 2 years. And he said at one point, a very famous politician said to him, if you sleep with me, I'll buy you a brand new Bentley. And he was like, I actually was thinking about it. It's like, I would really like a Bentley. And then he's like, what am I doing? Like I'm their pet. Like that's what they've got me here. Like this woman just wanted like a celebrity pet. And so I've been like living in her house as this kind of like a weird, it's almost like, here in Victorian times, it was kind of considered like a good social standing to have like a hobo living on your property. And it's like, it's like an Eyes Wide Shut, some weird kind of twisted, decadent rich people thing.
Okay, talk me through this pet thing, because this sounds like a good next stage of my career, because like we have pets and pets are looked after very well. Like the idea of being at some sort of like 2-year party just as a novelty for rich people. Do you think that I could be someone's pet? Do you think there would be somebody out there of wealthy means? Like they have to be eccentric like this person, but say, let's say it is a female benefactor. It doesn't have to be, but let's just say for this example, like this one was, grew up listening to Triple J or something, like in formative years, but has gone on to make like millions in business and those sort of things, and just has always had some sort of affection for me or my work or whatever it is. Like reminds me of some time in her life that is important to her, and she has so much money that she's like, well, this would be fun. Like I could go and see him in concert, or I could just have him living in the pool room, and he could be my pet, and I could bring him out at parties and stuff. Like what would the role entail, do you think? Like from watching this documentary, what do you feel like your day, what Abs had to get up to?
Well, I think Abs just had to be there. Like, I think Abs just had to, it wasn't like he was having to perform. So I doubt you'd have to be like, you wouldn't have to be writing any more material. I think your presence alone is the value. Yeah, I think it'd be a pretty good deal for you, but I think you would have to
Feels
party.
Like a great job.
Well, you'd have to party all the time.
Abs is complaining about. Again, I'm not sure what Abs is complaining about.
Well, don't you think it would be like a little kind of, it would be a bit of a nightmare after a while. It'd be like that ironic punishment where it's like, oh, partying all the time would be amazing. But then surrounded by those people. And I imagine too, it would be a slowly escalating, like at first it would be great. You're just the pet. You just come out and people are like, oh, there's Wil Anderson. I used to watch him on the Glass House and stuff. Yeah. But then they want Wil Anderson. What can we make Wil Anderson do? Do you think if we threw this money on the floor, like with his bad hips, we could get him on hands and knees, like picking up these $5 bills? The humiliations would start because they're rich. They because I think what happens is rich people who are untalented or rich people who aren't famous, they have money, but they don't have any of the other kind of trappings. And so they like hanging around with famous people because it makes them feel like, just by association that maybe they're famous or they're talented or whatever. So they're going to want to bring you down to their level. They're going to want to take the shine off your talent and make you feel as worthless as they feel about themselves. That's what I'm saying. So I think it would be fine for the first month, but soon they're going to want to humiliate you. little bits and pieces of humiliation.
I mean, yeah, okay. Well, I humiliate myself on a daily basis, so I can put up with a little humiliation from others if it means I don't have to write new shows.
Well, what if it was more like, like I understand that the Playboy bunnies, like if you're one of Hef's girlfriends, there were certain, curfews, for instance. No, you couldn't have any, friends over, let alone like Amy or anything like that. You can't have contact with your friends unless it's pre-approved by us. You certainly can't be doing your fucking dinky little podcast. That's out. You probably cop less shit from Two Guys, One Cup fans who are angry about us moving to listener. Might be a relief, actually. You become someone's pet.
A lot of Two Guys, One Cup fans will be just like, oh, well, Will's not on listener anymore. He's someone's pet now. He can't do the show. He's decided to go into the world. Charlie told him about a documentary. He did some research into abs from 5, and now he's a professional pet.
So I think that would be the restrictions. And then I imagine there'd be some, like you couldn't be getting about in your bloody tracksuit pants and your basic tees. Like they're going to want you to dress up a bit. I'd say that would be probably the most challenging thing for you, is they're going to want you to be presentable at all times.
Well, I'd be like a pet that you dress up though. Like, the pet doesn't like it. It's fun for them. Yeah, always pulling at the collar a little bit. But no, I dress up for parties, but I'm not dressing up all day long.
No. Well, because Hef said that his girls always had to be like in full makeup and they couldn't be in tracksuit pants and stuff. They got to dress sexy. So you've got to dress like, what do you wear on Gruen? It's like a suit and tie, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's not what I've always worn. No, that's not fair. I'm not agreeing to this. I'll be your pet. I'll wear a suit and tie to parties, but I'm not wearing a suit and tie all the time like I'm your butler or something. I'm your pet, not your staff. Because that's the difference. You're looking at me as an employee, whereas I'm looking at me as a pet. Like, you've got to treat me in the way that you would treat a pet. Like, it's for companionship. It's for, like, socialization, like being around other people, showing off. Maybe you get me to do a few tricks. You can dress me up occasionally. But you're not, like, mostly you've got to treat me like a pet. You've got to feed me. You've got to care for me. You've got to look after me. Like,
take you to the doctor.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, if I'm sick, you've got to take me to the doctor.
But your pet doesn't get to choose what it eats. So, like, they're putting stuff out for you. Like, what if there's no vegetarian option? What are you going to do then?
Well, what I would say is my pet gets an array of treats and treats that they like. We worked out what they like, and then we give them what they like. And this is a rich person. They're not going to want to underfeed their pet. They want their pet looking good. So they want me to have a good coat at the party. Do you know what I mean? Like, they'll give me proper grooming and stuff. They don't want some scruffy pet entertainer ruining their celebrity parties.
Just vegan, chocolate vegan. Well, mate, you can't have too many of those vegan peanut butter brownies if they want you looking good for your guests.
I know, but that's my treat. When I've been a good boy, I get a vegan peanut butter brownie.
Let's get to the mailbag, Will, before we wrap this show up.
Can we quickly, just before we get to the mailbag, I just wanted to quickly mention, because Foo Fighters are always such a huge part of conversations that we've had on this show. Taylor Hawkins, who, very, very sadly, only 50 years old, has died. Obviously, at the time we're recording this, there isn't a lot of information around. Like, there's a lot of speculation around why he might have died, but there isn't a lot of firm information. So I don't think there's any point speculating about that. But Adam Spencer tweeted about this, but I was very lucky when I was working at Triple J. The Foo Fighters did a live at the Wireless, which is, the Triple J live music show. And they went down to a studio at the ABC, like in front of 30 people, and played like, an hour and a half set or whatever, as if they were in front of 30,000 people. And I got to sit, on the floor watching the Foo Fighters and, being 10 meters away from Taylor Hawkins, like watching him drum for all that time, which was one of the most amazing musical experiences I've ever had in my life. But the thing that I wanted to mention was that beforehand, because this wasn't in, a proper gig or a proper venue or anything, it was literally just this studio at the ABC. They had this other little office, which was essentially the green room, but it's just another little office near the studio. And Adam and I had popped our heads in beforehand just to, say hello. We'd had them on the show and we were going to say hello. Not only did they invite us in for a chat, but they invited the people in for a chat. And my memory is very much of not just how good Dave was to Amy, but how brilliantly charming and down to earth and nice and delightful that Taylor was to Amy as well. I only really got to meet him a couple of times, but he was a genuinely wonderful, delightful human being who brought an incredible amount of joy to an incredible amount of people. And I just feel really fucking sad that, for him and for his family and for, his bandmates, for Dave Grohl, you know what I mean? I like fucking Dave Grohl, man. Like, two of his best friends in the world, he's lost way before he's had one of the best lives that anyone has ever had, Dave Grohl. Like, I don't think anyone would argue with that.
Yeah.
But fuck, it's come with like an expensive price tag as well along the way.
Oh, the two of them are so, like, they're so endearing together. Like, they obviously love each other so much. And, I was saying to Jem last night, like, ordinarily, like, drummers can be replaced quite easily in bands, but you just wonder with this, in this case, because he was as much, like the leader of Foo Fighters as Dave was. Dave was the front man, but it was definitely felt like their band. And it's always the case when you see someone like him. I never met him like you did, but you can just tell from the interviews. I watched an interview they did on Stern like 2 weeks ago, and he was so funny. He told this story about meeting Prince Harry, and Prince Harry like punching him in the chest, slapping him in the face because he said that he was a bit jet lagged because he'd flown into the UK, and he told Harry that Harry was jet lagged, and so Harry slapped him in the face to try and wake him up. And he was like, I don't care if you're the fucking Prince of England, you don't just slap someone in the face. And he's just like so disarmingly funny and charming, and it's so sad. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I saw them on their last tour, but they played like in Geelong 2 weeks ago, and I mean, I believe he died 2 hours before a gig. It's really sad. And yeah, as you mentioned, we've talked about the Foo Fighters a lot on this show. So
I mean, to play drums in a band like where the lead singer and guitarist is regarded as probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest drummer of his generation, then you got to be good at playing drums. And Taylor Hawkins there was not a moment that you ever like watched a Foo Fighters gig and thought, fuck, I wish Dave Grohl was playing drums. And I think that's about as big a compliment that you could make to how good a drummer he was. He was just a compelling drummer. He was like one of those guys that, the best drummers do that, where you just like will find if you're watching them at a concert, you'll just spend entire parts of songs just staring at the drummer and watching them work. Just fucking, so sad.
Okay, well, let's get to the mailbag. This is from Taryn. Hi, Charlie and Will. I'm just going to out myself immediately. I pick random episodes of TOFOP and FOFOP and listen to them when I'm feeling anxious, and they genuinely help. Recently, my anxiety has been ramped up thanks to the Northern Territory giving up and letting COVID run rampant, and I've been using my TOFOP-based coping mechanism a bunch. All that is to say, I just listened to FOFOP episode 171, a fish on fish crime, which came out in December 2014, where Will and Dave answer questions submitted on the Facebook page. A question was, Will, at some point, you're going to have to take a year of stand-up because of your hips. Any ideas how you're going to fill in your time? Personally, seeing that you like comics, I'd like to see you and Charlie write something and get James Fosdyke to draw it. Sure looks like this person predicted everyone relax. And that wasn't the end of the very accurate predictions either. The last question in the episode, would you rather live out the rest of your life 100 years in the future or 100 years in the past? Dave said, okay, so it would either be 1914, we're talking about what's coming in 4 years, Spanish flu, World War I, and then the Great Depression, then World War II. Or starting in 2114, rainbows, unicorns are real, money falls from the sky, you can eat everything because it's candy. I would go into the future. Oh no, wait, we're all dying because of global warming and Ebola and mass plagues. Taryn says, somehow, with that strong finish, the coping mechanism worked a treat, and I don't feel anxious at all. I don't know how that could be. So glad you guys are back. Excellent. Oh, thank you, Taryn. And I'm glad that we can help. It is a strange time. I think we're all feeling a bit anxious at the moment. My coping mechanism is to delve into boy bands of the late 90s. If TOFOP is helping you, then that's great. This next bit of mail is from Jesse. Clawson is awesome. Greetings from America. I'm a new listener to you guys after hearing Will's amazing appearance on the live Dollops. My brother converted me to a Dollop listener last June, and I have now listened to every episode, particularly several of the live episodes featuring Wil, and I can listen to them for the umpteenth time any day of the week. I wasn't sold on Charlie at first, but 3 episodes later, I was in. You boys have made an AFL fan of me. Before I knew any of your allegiances, I did an online quiz for which team I should follow, and I was directed towards the Bulldogs, and I haven't looked back. Well, maybe this year will give you some cause to look back.
You not be able to get the podcast in America other than through the website and a VPN.
Unfortunately, the subscription in the US is $170 a year. Is that right? Watch AFL in the US? Was it $170? I don't think it was.
It's expensive. I know it is expensive though. But it's been a few years since we were there, and it was expensive even then.
Gonna have to figure it out, suppose. Also, the live matches air at about 4 a.m. my time. That's just a little early to start drinking. Any suggestions on watching match replays for free? I don't know. I'm not techie enough. I'm sure that if you went onto some
I bet there is
AFL forum.
How do you watch AFL for free overseas? Somebody hit us up and let us know. There must be somebody listening who knows.
Anyway, the reason I wrote in the first place is that Clawson and awesome is a slant rhyme, which Eminem and Shakespeare have made famous. However, I might suggest, and this only works with an American accent, Clawson is Barson is better. Love you, boys. Clawson is Barson. Doesn't...
I mean, it's closer.
Clawson is awesome sounds... No, it's not. Are you saying Clawson is Barson? Clawson is Barson.
Clawson is Bosson is closer than
Clawson
is awesome.
No, it's knob. Knob. No, it's knob.
Okay, I win again. Based on that, using the word is knob. I would not accept that.
Well, that is not correct. This is from Karen. Hey guys, I do not usually contact my podcast, but I feel annoyed on your behalf that people are complaining about your shift to listener. I do listen to a number of listener podcasts via my iPhone podcast app, and I've downloaded the new app, and I had no issues. I love the banter between you two, how you manage to make each other really laugh out loud. Most people are happy as such and do not bother with contacting to let you know. They say, good job, love it. And it's mainly people who are aggrieved that send feedback, which is kind of the point you're making last week. As a basketball referee and a referee coach, and actually a welfare officer, I tell people that happy people don't speak up, only grumpy people. So if you've had some negative feedback, remember how many games you've officiated. She's talking about herself here, and how many people were there. And that means the negative comments are really in the small minority. The other thing that has stuck with me from philosophy was you would not ask these people for advice, so do not listen to their criticism. That is true, I guess. I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of doctors in our audience. Maybe I would ask for their advice. Certainly.
But on medical issues, not necessarily on podcasting decisions. Like, they're qualified to be a doctor. That is true. They're not qualified to give you podcasting advice.
Okay, that is TOFOP for this week. Don't forget to go to tofop.com to check out all our other great podcasts. On FOFOP this week, Cam Knight is returning. That is a really fun chat. I had to be a little short because I was running off to pick Iona at some point. But we get into a lot of really interesting topics, including Cam's 5-year sobriety, which is amazing. We've known Cam for a long time, and the transformation for him in the last, since he quit drinking, has been incredible. So that's a good chat. And then Two Guys, One Cup, obviously on the listener app. This week, it shifts exclusively to the listener app. We've left it on all channels leading up to this point just to get you guys used to it. But now, if you want it, please download the listener app for free and get listening for free.
And if you want to come and see me do some live stand-up, so my Logical show starts at the Melbourne Comedy Festival on Thursday. So Thursday for 3.5 weeks, Melbourne International Comedy Festival, Comedy Theatre. Logical is the name of the show. I think it's going to be really fun. Friday night is my press night, so if you're looking for a night to come along, it'd be good to have a big night there because it's obviously a pretty brand new show for a bunch of reasons, and it is going to Sydney and Brisbane. Last night of the comedy festival, I'm doing my improvised show, What You're Talking About, Wil, and I'm also doing my improvised show in Sydney and Brisbane as well. I'm sure there'll be other dates to follow at some stage.
And if you want to support us, the best way to do that is at patreon.com/TOFOP. Lots of great bonus content has gone up. Brand new Everyone Relax comic strip. We're about to record a bonus episode of TOFOP where we answer Patreon letters. There's just a heap of great stuff, and it is really the best way to support us. Oh, and by the way, if you have signed up at the $20 level, for people watching, here is the posters. I'm doing a big mail out this week, so we're all up to date on the bonus content.
For those who aren't watching, Charlie did not actually hold up a poster. He held up a thing you would send out a poster in. Might not be a poster in there at all.
Yeah, it's budgerigar. I'm actually running an illegal exotic animal business on the side. That's how we're paying for these shows. But for now, I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Wil Anderson.
This podcast is a TOFOP production.
Head to tofop.com for more.
Cool things for cool people.